Hello again. I want to introduce you to our team auctioneer, Phil. He's going to explain what's going to happen in the meeting we're soon going to have with you and what's going to happen on auction day.
Thank you, Ali, and thank you for taking the time to watch this link. And I hope by so doing, you will be well prepared for when I meet you shortly, and more importantly, well prepared for your auction day. Now, when I meet with you, one of the things that we need to do is to set an auction reserve. Let me put your mind at ease. At all stages during the auction, you are in charge. And the first thing I tell you is that I'm never going to sell your property, no matter the price, until you say, Phil, sell it. And I will not ask you to make your final decision until I'm confident I've got every last dollar the buyer will pay. No one's going to buy and go home with change. So the only reason that we set an auction reserve, it's a legal requirement. There's three things I want to tell you about the reserve. Firstly, this. Your reserve and all figures that we talk must always be kept confidential before, during and after the auction. They are your business. Secondly, your reserve is not set in stone. If the last bid doesn't quite reach the desired figure, but you decide the more prudent thing to do is to sell and move on, that's exactly what you'll do. And the last thing is, I don't stop at reserve, I stop when the money runs out. Now, in terms of preparation, I'm going to suggest to you, more important than your reserve is this. I think before auction, you need to privately determine what I describe as your bottom line. Now, that's the figure above which you will sell, but below which, no, you definitely won't. The reason I suggest bottom line is the most important is this. If we get the chance to sell on auction day cash and unconditionally, because that is very, very important, but it's not quite at your desired level, I want you to be comfortable, I want you to be relaxed and confident with your decision. We will respect that decision. You just don't want to be hours or days after the auction thinking, oh my gosh, I wish we'd done differently, because by that stage it's too late. Let's talk about what will happen on auction day. Before your auction, I go through a brief preamble. At the end of that, I ask the question, ladies and gentlemen, is there an opening bid? And you won't be surprised to learn that in 90% of cases, the room just descends into silence and people sit on their hands. That's called human nature. Don't panic. Now, I've got the right to place bids for you. We call that vendor bidding. I would open 90% of the auctions that I call. So if no one starts, I'm going to say, let me tell you where I wouldn't sell the property. And I start at a level that's low and comfortable for your possible bidders. I want them all in. I want to give them lots of room to bid. The more they bid, the more they will bid. Momentum will be your friend. I will drive that bidding until it stops or nearly stops. At the end of that bidding, one of two things is going to happen. I may pause to talk to you and to continue negotiations with your highest bidder before you make your decision. Now, the reasons I would do that, there are two. Firstly, I'm below your reserve and at a level where we're never going to sell. Secondly, I could be at or around your reserve, but I suspect that that buyer, just from the way that they're bidding, has still got more money to spend. You won't make your decision till I have exhausted that. So we pause, I talk to you briefly and privately. I then take your top bidder aside independently and privately and say, whilst you're the top bidder, no, it's not enough. I need your very best. And I will work and work and work until they inevitably say, Phil, there's no more, that's the last dollar. If they want $1 more, we're out the door. When I think I've got them to what I describe as breaking point and absolutely at their maximum, I will come to you and say, today in the auction room, cash and unconditionally, this is the best I can do. And now it's over to you to make your decision. Now, hopefully you decide the best thing to do is to sell and move on. If that's the case, we go back into the auction room and we resume. And I go back in and I say, I left the room with the bid at this level, top bidder has increased it to this level, and my owners have instructed me to sell if there's no better. Now, sell it I will, that's 100% certain, and sell it at that figure, well, that's 99% certain. And the reason I say 99 and not 100 is that the underbidders who have stopped do have the chance to bid again. But when you've opened a big gap, if they've stopped down here, it's most unlikely they will re-enter the fray at that higher level. And if they do, we will treat that purely as a bonus and never have it as an expectation. Now, remember, I pause if I'm below reserve or I think there's more money. If it becomes clear at the end of bidding that the money is running out, my call will be different. And it will become clear to you and to me that the money is running out when the last two bidders get into an epic battle and their bids go and go and go and go, but they get slower, they get lower, they get slower, and they get lower. And I say at the end, it's like pulling teeth. Now, the only interpretation of that behaviour is these people now are clearly spending money that they never intended to spend. They're over what I describe as their preset budgets. Because if they weren't, they'd impose themselves with a really, really strong bid to get rid of that other person. The fact they don't and the way that they bid will show you and show me they're really struggling and getting uncomfortable. So if the bidding is like that, like pulling teeth, and only if I've reached your selling zone. Now let me explain selling zone. Here's your reserve. You must have a bit of flexibility or wriggle room in that reserve. So if I get really, really close, and we will predetermine that number, so if I get to this level or better, even if I hit reserve, I never say selling until you say sell. But if I'm in that selling zone and it's like pulling teeth, and I thought the best result would be achieved for you by saying, yes, we're selling without stopping and losing that precious momentum, then I will ask for instructions on the auction floor. When I ask for instructions on the auction floor, I'm really communicating with you and saying, I think the best thing to do is to say, we're selling it now without stopping. Now, the reason I make that recommendation to you is in the hope and expectation that when you say, yes, we're selling, that call should trigger some last minute bidding. And it normally does. In fact, it almost invariably does. I won't say always because I'll get tripped up. And the reason it causes more bidding is all of a sudden the dynamic in the room changes. People are no longer trying to buy your property. They're trying desperately not to lose your property. They know if they don't keep going, the dream is over. They know within seconds one of them has the prize, the other is empty-handed. You'll get all of their money. Now, remember this, once you've said selling, we are, and you have to realise that perhaps the next bid or the next will be the last, but it never goes backwards. You're sold, it's cash, it's unconditional, and you move on. So there's your procedure on the day. Now, remember I said to you the most important thing for you is to privately determine your bottom line. I'm going to make a suggestion as to how you might determine that bottom line. You'll say, look, this is the reserve. This is what we're hoping to achieve on auction day. You need to go through what I describe as the what-if scenario. So you say, that's what we'd like to get, but what if the bidding stops here? What will our decision be? If it stops here, what are we going to say? Or here, or here, or here. The mystery with auction is we don't know where that bidding is going to stop, but the certainty is whenever I've got that last dollar, I'll be coming and say, time to make a decision. And if you haven't thought through all of those levels, you might make one of those decisions you'd like to change later. But as I've said, it's too late. Can I suggest what you really need to know when you come to auction in your heart of hearts is what would be our minimum, rock bottom, grumpy and disappointed figure. Now that's the figure where you sell and you go, bother. And I've heard a lot stronger than that. Bother, bother, bother. We thought and hoped we'd have got more, but our property is sold. It's cash, it's unconditional, and we're moving on. And do you know what? Universally, anyone who sells in the auction room and leaves a little bit disappointed, would all tell you the next day, the smile returns to their face, that black cloud of uncertainty disappears, and you move on. And they say, hey, whilst it wasn't quite what we wanted, we don't care what happens in the market now. We'll never sell for 1 cent less. Once again, thank you for taking the time to watch this. I hope it's been helpful. Really looking forward to meeting with you and, more importantly, representing you and your property on auction day. Goodbye.